Why, hello there. Welcome back to the AgostinhoZinga show with I, your host, AgostinhoZinga, and this is episode number 551. I'm pretty sure it's 551, and if it's not 551, then I do apologize for getting my numbers incorrect, but I'm an illiterate young black male living in East London trying to make the best that I can with the information and resources that are available to me. Okay, I apologize. I do apologize. But yeah, welcome back, man. Thank you for joining me here once again. I am now the day after United got knocked out against Middlesbrough in the FA Cup at home, right? It's not that we lost away from home to a championship side and their home fans basically were up for it. Their players were sliding into tackles and we were, kind of put off of our game. No, we lost at home at the, theatre of dreams, supposedly. The theatre of dreams that couldn't serve any of the people that went to the stadium actual food because of an electrical fault. Right, we got beat on our home turf by Middlesbrough, who, if I'm not mistaken, are 7th in the championship, and are managed by a one Wilder, who was the former manager of Sheffield United until he got sacked. Chew on that for a minute. Chew on that one for a minute. But yeah, whatever, innit? I try not to let my club ruin my weekend, but it's really difficult because most likely all the other clubs, especially the Premier League clubs, playing the FA Cup games today, which is Saturday, will probably end up winning, which will then make our loss a far more brutal reality to accept. But it is what it is. Most likely this season we're going to go without another trophy. We're probably not going to win a Champions League. I say probably, we're not, okay? So it's going to be 6 years without a trophy. Next year, there's no guarantee we're going to get close to even competing for anything because we're going to have a new manager. So to expect them to come in and win a trophy in their first season is ridiculous. But again, the standards of United need to be up here. But for whatever reason, people lowered them based on who they want in the job and whatnot. Same thing happens with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer goes in charge. So it could effectively get to a 10-year point until we win a major honor or until we win an actual proper trophy. 10 years. 10. And don't get me started on challenge for the league. That's far, far, far away. But yeah, we're in a sticky situation. But again, I do not care. I'm trying to move on. I'm not going to let it kind of consume my weekend. And I'm going to try to do the best that I can with the opportunity that I've got to live in this great world that we live in at this moment, right? Great world. Whatever. Somewhere along the line, I will make it work. We will make it work. And we'll figure it out at the end of the day. We'll figure it out. But anyway. Loads of stuff to get into today, loads of things to talk about, loads of topics to get on into and dive on deep and pontificate about and all that malarkey. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, grab a seat and let's just jump right in. First thing first to talk about, because I was speaking about this previously because I wanted to go there, was the conflict going on at the moment in Ukraine. As some of you will know, Russia sent over, 100,000 troops to the Ukrainian border in some sort of show of force. Now Putin is alleging that America are the ones funding Ukraine and all this malarkey. There's stuff going on in Ukraine that's way above my intellectual level. But regardless, that stuff that's going on in Ukraine was jeopardizing my holiday. And obviously, my holiday is more important than the everyday lives of Ukrainians living there, right? My holiday and my ability to go and dance to techno music and take copious amounts of Class A substances is way more important to me and to everybody else than people that actually live there, obviously, right? But I was obviously a bit worried about the situation, thinking I might put a pause on my, techno weekender. But through some confirmation and some clarification from some people that actually live there, who lived there and who have actually been there previously, big up to unnamed person. Also big up to Christina. Thank you so much for the tips and for the heads up. Much appreciated. I'm now more at ease about me being able to navigate such a place being an IC3 male. I feel somewhat a lot more calmer and a lot less apprehensive. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't apprehensive, I wasn't really scared. I'm just saying it because it sounds good to say on the podcast. But regardless, this is good information to hear. Courtesy of RA. Stay calm and informed. Ukrainians clubbing community responds to Russia border crisis. So RA decided to interview or to gather the thoughts of people who are actually from Ukraine, who are part of that clubbing infrastructure, and to kind of give their opinion on what they feel like this border crisis is basically doing to the clubbing scene, and whether or not foreigners like me should be worried about what's going on there, whether or not that should affect our ability to go and travel to those kind of places, to go and club and whatnot, and do a bit of sightseeing and eat some nice food. And I think some of the responses are quite illuminating and quite eye-opening, especially for somebody that's always viewing news from a Western perspective. So you're not actually getting what's actually happening over there from the ground floor, from the ground, because obviously I don't understand Ukrainian, so it's kind of hard to decipher what they're saying in the news. And obviously I don't know anybody that's from there, but it's a completely different way how they're presenting it. It's a completely different way. The reality of the situation is way different when you're there vis-a-vis when you're over here. Brainbuster, absolute brainbuster. So let's go down and talk. So let's go down and read some of these responses. So this is courtesy of somebody from HVLV. This is one of those bar clubs that, if I'm not mistaken, was the victim of it was a victim from an attack from a far right group. I'm pretty sure this was one of the ones. I'm pretty sure there's a video of it actually on YouTube of these skinheads kind of deciding to come on in and beat the door and smash the windows and stuff, obviously scaring some of the patrons in there and hurl some, some not so nice epithets at these people inside. And they had a following to say regarding the border crisis, how it's affected the clubbing scene in Ukraine. They said as follows: "We know that it's difficult to remain calm, but panic and frustration are what our adversaries expect from us. Prudent sense of community and critical thinking are the qualities that helped us prevail during the Maidan, and we remember those times very well because the co-founders of HVLV, most of their team were there. We need to stick together, evaluate information, and continue to do our job. We'll continue to holding events, plan future projects and collaborations. We'll need to make some decisions along the way, think more about the safety and the state of the team, and take into account more financial risk. But making plans and working hard now is the best thing we can do as a business. We recommend this to our guests and to the community too. Stay calm and come party with us. As a legendary meme of our time says, even if Russia invades, the clubs will work." I love that. It has historically been the case, and the cultural community is the most resilient and stable. Something tells me, again, this is maybe a something throwing out there. I know Russia's obviously a way more kind of a strict place to live or to have these cultural things happen than Ukraine would be. But something tells me the fact that it's so totalitarian and so rigid, that most likely the underground scene in Russia must be amazing too, because there's always a counterbalance. Whenever the government are doing one thing, usually the underground scene or culture usually responds in another way, or especially the younger generation, they want to just rebel against it. So I'd imagine the underground parties in parts of flipping St. Petersburg and all that sort of stuff must be absolutely rocking. Or even on the outskirts, I bet you they are really, really good because they have nothing else, right? And and people don't really tour there too often. And if they do, they're usually some of the bigger artists, and maybe the local scene probably really cool. I'd imagine it's really, 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 really cool. I'd imagine so. But yeah, cool to see them say this. To continue on, another venue called Closer Kiev, which I've kind of, if I'm not mistaken, I followed their Instagram account. I'm pretty sure. I think it's _closer_, and it's really good because they've got some amazing videos of the club that people always share. It might be one of the only clubs I can think of, with maybe the exception of UK clubs, that actively shares clips of people partying at their space, because usually a lot of techno clubs like to remain mysterious and don't like people to see indoors or to see the inside of the club, and there's this idea that no pictures will allow people to kind of give themselves to the rave a little bit more and not be so self-conscious, so they kind of have a policy of no pictures, no videos. But if I'm not mistaken, from my opinion anyway, Closer is one of the most kind of prevalent clubs I've seen on social media that actively shares clips of people partying and have a good time. And I think it acts as a really good marketing tool for that club, because you see this amazing open air club that everyone's raving on and getting and having a good time with, and it kind of makes you want to go. It gives you that bit of wanderlust, as opposed to other clubs that are just posting fucking flyers on their feed every single minute, every single day. It's not really anything, or still pictures. That doesn't really give you a vibe of it. Even sometimes when people post those clips of themselves in Berghain with the cameras covered and they're recording just the sound, because obviously they cover the camera with stickers, that actually gives you more of a feeling and a vibe of what the ambiance is like than just seeing a picture of people standing outside the queue outside this massive gray building. Those kind of those videos without any actual images on it are actually a good way to kind of market the club, because even though you can't see anything, you can feel it. But anyway, let's continue. Closer says the following: For now, Kiev is living its normal life. Not a single institution closed, either a theatre or a cafe, neither are clubs. We do our best to keep propaganda and pressure from affecting our daily and nightly lives. What is shown on the news looks intimidating, but in reality, Kiev is relaxed and celebrating. It definitely does look intimidating because you see these, these kitted up soldiers on the border, cleaning their guns, checking all their equipment, and just flexing on the border. And it makes you think, oh my God, are these troops actually in the main city? Do you know what I mean? Boots on the ground, stomping through nightclubs and taking, kicking people's baggies out of their hands and shit. I wonder if that's happening. I doubt it, but you never know. Would we invite our friends from abroad to Ukraine and to join the party? Yes. Are we 100% sure it's all just bluff from Russia's side and there'll be no large-scale invasion? No, we cannot guarantee anything. Is it safe to come to Kiev? Well, we should be safe, but we cannot take responsibility for Russia's moves. We would, however, take responsibility to take care of our friends and artists in the best possible way. To me, that's an invitation to go. That tells me I should go there running with my mouth, nose, and eyes and ears open, ready to kind of ingratiate myself in that scene and take it all in. That's what it's basically telling me. And I love that kind of message. I love it. It says, is it okay to make parties during this period? Parties are needed now more than ever. For a few reasons: to distract us from the news, to feel and show that our spirit did not falter, to celebrate the freedom, to stay together, to dance as it is the best thing that could possibly be done at this moment. It's up to the artist to decide whether to take the risk and come over, and we would understand any decision. But we would be happy to celebrate and dance together and invite all our friends and join. You know what, right? If you were a business techno person and you went to certain places just to go and cash in on a check because you needed the money or because you just were bored at home, this is actually more of a political stance to go and play at Kiev, to go play in Kiev and to play for those people over there, considering what they're kind of going through as a country, would actually be more of a political stance than going to go play in flipping Honduras and taking advantage of a lax government and a quote unquote third world country, lax regulations when it comes, or mandates when it comes to COVID, and then kind of swindling those guys out of the money because essentially you would never play there anyway in a normal season, but because of the pandemic and all the other clubs that you want to play at aren't open, now suddenly you become the flipping ambassador for Colombia. You don't care about Colombia, really. You don't care about Dominican Republic. You're just taking advantage of their lax regulations when it comes to COVID and inviting foreigners over. But if you actually want to make a political stance and you want to actually show that you stand for something apart from the flipping dollar, you would go over to Kiev and play for those guys over there, guys and girls. You would help distract them from this impending invasion from Putin and his cronies. But they're not going to do that, are they? They're not going to do that. But I am. I'm going to fight for everyone's freedom. One baggie and what did they eat on the street I saw in the video? One baggie and those corn dog things at a time, or the brost or whatever, right? That's what I'm going to do. One at a time. It continues here. Another person, Valentin Bobliev, co-founder of Kultura Zuka Kharkiv. I didn't say that. My bad. So yeah, the situation is tense. All of Ukrainian people don't want war and are very frightened by the statements and actions from Russia. This is somebody from the other opposing point of view. Ukraine is definitely an independent country and will never accept the position of being part of Russia. I think that's a big mistake of Russian politicians, to misinform the population of their country and use lies about the fact that the nationalists in Ukraine infringe on Russian-speaking population to justify their aggression against Ukraine. We live in how do you pronounce it? Is it Kharkiv or Kharkiv? Oh man. We live in Kharkiv, and most parts of the environment use Russian as a main spoken language. No one will say that they have any problems with that, but everyone agrees on one thing: we want to live in an independent Ukraine, not in Russia. In 2021, we did a party every week. In 2022, we switched to 2 parties a month. We don't stop, but the general mood said to us that we should do less often. I started seeing a trend of less popular partying since the fall. I think this may be due to both COVID-19 and Russian aggression lately. If the situation escalates and Russia goes to occupy other Ukrainian territories as did in 2014, then I'll assume the nightlife will completely disappear in those territories, as in Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea. but I hope common sense will win. Ukraine will remain independent and peaceful, and we will still dance. Hallelujah. Another person called Anatoly Boryschenko, founder of Collider, said this following: I'm tired to be afraid. I feel like I was already killed in 2014 and 2015. I don't want to live Ukraine. I like Ukraine. I like Podly community. I see a lot of opportunities to make difference, to create something new. It's a pity that millions of people lose a lot of opportunities, resources, and sometimes life because of one old crazy maniac. I'm very angry and I want to end this. Otherwise, it's killing us slowly. For most people, art is not an essential commodity in wartime situation. We see fewer people attending events. We are experiencing difficulties in arranging artist visits from other countries. I assume the market has cut more than 50%. Wow. If it continues for any long time, a lot of people will have to sacrifice their art and earn a living in other spheres. It depends on the level of escalation. Before 2014, it was very hard to imagine war in Ukraine at all. After several months of shock, people started to get used to the situation. A lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people came to Kiev. In general, it's a kind of creative boost to the community. But of course, if the war spreads to other regions, especially Kiev, it will be disastrous. Cultural activity in this territory occupied by Russia is close to zero. Culture is dangerous for totalitarianism. And I agree so much with this person. Let's go to this the Berghain Club and see what they had to say. Sorry, I had to skip over one. This is the following. I don't know how you pronounce the name of the club. I think it's called 41 wherever the street is. But yeah, let's just quickly read over this comment. It says here, for Ukraine, the last 8 years have been a time of uncertainty. We are used to checking our feeds daily, constantly awaiting news. During this period, we have been repeatedly challenged to navigate the informational oversaturation. With a sober mind, we observe what is happening. Yet we often are unable to keep calm and focus on our daily lives as the news about the threatening moves of Russian military at our borders are making the headlines not only locally, but also internationally media channels. In moments like this, it's important for us to unite and to synchronize to support each other. Panic is a powerful tool for destabilization, and we urge our community to stay calm and informed. Everyone's saying it, stay calm. No one dictates our agenda. We and our cultural public institutions in Kiev keep on working as always as we continue to do our best to create a safer space for all. So they definitely putting a middle finger up and trying to do as best as they can in terms of the situation. And let's just read one more from a DJ. This is DJ Mel G. Says the following: all in all, I feel good in Ukraine, but I don't know how long I'll stay or how long I can stay. I have always been aware of the political situation in Russia, but now it's something is come to a head. I'm constantly talking to my friends here. I trust them, and I'm grateful for this clarification because I have learned a lot that I could not know through media or research. I would like to quote the Telegram channel of the whatever in the moments like this. It's important for us to unite and synchronize, support each other. In general, I feel okay in Kiev because I don't sense any panic from any circles of my friends, but I also notice that there is a natural fear. It's difficult for me. It's difficult to feel my way into it. The only thing I can say now is that Ukraine has my full support. I can say that music and nightlife are political, always have been and always will be. So for me, it's really important not to stop music events because it's important to talk about what's going on with everyone. When I was in Keller on Friday, I also recognize a lot of people were talking about political situation, and that's important. That must be pretty cool, and to see people kind of uniting in that way and mobilizing in one way and also informing each other in another, because that's actually community. None of this sort of nonsense where they say to the community and then they try and charge you £35 to come and see fucking Richie Houghton play again. Like, nah, this is actually community. In the face of adversity, everyone's putting down their differences and whatnot and their beefs and deciding to unite in the face of totalitarianism. And I'm loving it. I actually can't wait to go. I'm actually invigorated after reading that, and I actually might go fairly soon, more so than I was planning to go, because I think the plan was to go in May. I might have to push that forward just so I can go experience it, partake, lend my support in whichever way that I can, and hopefully come back home in one piece. Then we had information here courtesy of RA again regarding Dutch venues deciding to defy COVID-19 rules for one day of celebration on February the 12th. And I'm here for it. So it says as following. It says numerous clubs and venues across Netherlands are planning to defy the current COVID-19 regulations and reopen on Saturday, February the 12th. The paper called De Nacht Stat Op campaign, which means the night is on, is in English, has launched early this week by nightlife groups. How do you say that? Natch Belang and the OAC, the Council of Amsterdam Clubs. So far, dozens of venues have signed up, including Amsterdam's Melkeg, Radio, Shelter, plus Time Out Garden, Echo, Utrecht, and Annabelle in Rotterdam. If participation venues open this weekend, they'll be breaking the COVID-19 regulations, which, despite loosening last month for cafes, bars, and restaurants, still state that late night spots must remain closed until further notice. A similar situation played out last month when cafes and several cities chose to open and defy the regulations. Speaking to resident advisor Axel van der Loot of Vanderlucht, programmer at the Amsterdam venue Duca Claude, called the reopening campaign a protest to protect our culture. He added, "We feel that Dutch politicians failed to recognize the significance value of nightlife over the past 2 years," which is something been happening all over the world, unfortunately. I don't think any country, especially in the face of the pandemic, has responded very well when it comes to protecting nightlife and understanding its cultural importance, and especially just life's importance, right? I mean, giving people something to be distracted by in terms of the daily rigors of having to keep up with COVID-19, rules and news and whatnot. Having the ability to kind of tap out for a bit and go to a bar, go to a restaurant, go to all these kind of cultural things, it was really important. And the moment we didn't have it, we saw how lonely and how sad and depressed we all got. So, it's just been a shame really to see that happening all over the world in that regard. But I'm just happy in the UK we don't have those kind of regulations in place. That's been one of the kind of best approaches that this conservative crappy government has done. But anyway, it continues here. This is a common thread among club owners and promoters in Netherlands. Melkwegs Levi Smolder told RA that venues are fed up with the lack of concern and attention from Prime Minister Mark Rutte and his government. Club culture is bleeding, Smolder said. Due to the lack of perspective, people look for employment in other sectors, not knowing when they can go back to work they love. And that's something that someone mentioned, the founder or the owner of that Munich club, I think it was Blitz or something. He said one of the hardest parts about reopening is the fact that he's lost so many legitimately good members of staff that are never going to come back to working in nightlife because they've been without work for 6 or 7 months. They decided to go and do other things, and then those other things are maybe giving them career prospects or open their eyes to maybe taking a break from the scene, whatever it may be. But he's definitely lost people that he was working with who were fundamental parts of making that club a success, and especially in countries or in places like that where they take club culture very seriously. It's probably really difficult to find good people. So when you find them, you want to hold on to them. So having those people go, and then also having the dip in tourism, is going to negatively affect your club, even if you are reopened. So it's not as if like you reopen and suddenly everyone's going to be running in. Some people have been completely turned off from going to nightclubs because of fear of the pandemic or being in close confined places, even though most nightclubs are probably set up in better than most businesses to kind of run during a pandemic because of all the ventilation systems that they have to put in place for, like, smoke alarms and whatnot. So yes, it's a really unfortunate state of affairs. It continues here. Vincent Reinders, owner of Radio, said the club was facing bankruptcy and losing half of our staff after only being opened for 3 times after midnight in the past 2 years. Oh my God. And our Prime Minister had the nerve to tell us to become creative last week. The politicians have been so out of touch with what regular folk have been feeling and kind of dealing with that it's been quite scary, really, to be honest. The lack of, usually, again, we're not surprised by politicians being out of touch, but especially nowadays, considering that everybody is sharing how they're feeling in a real way online constantly and on a consistent basis, you'd think they'd have somebody who would maybe be able to, kind of be able to sense the temperature of our society and be able to kind of relay that back, but that doesn't happen. If anything, they're even more burrowed into their kind of lapse of privilege and isolation and just not engaging at all with what regular people are going through. And it's really, 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 really sad. It continues to say that another driving factor behind the campaign is the rise of illegal raves, which have been happening across the country with little or no safety measures. Next weekend at Duca, Vandervoort confirmed that there will be a significant ventilation and no entry after midnight to make sure that there's no spreading through the city. The club will also be enforcing 3G admission policy, proof of vaccinations or recovery, or a negative test. He says as follows: "That's why we want to reopen again, to offer a physically, mentally, and sexually safer environment for everybody who already is going out during these times. It's time to stand up for ourselves. It's unclear what the consequences will be if these venues open next Saturday. On Monday, the 7th of February, government officials are due to meet with nightlife's representative to discuss the situation. The Dutch government has enforced some of the strictest lockdown rules in the world during the pandemic. Yesterday, the number of the new cases of COVID-19 hit a record high." You love that, innit? That juxtaposition. They've got one of the strictest lockdowns in effect at the moment, but yet they still have record highs of infections and whatnot. It's just, sometimes you just have to maybe decide that you have to live with this, innit? That could be the situation. That could be one of the solutions. But again, what do I know? It ends here. It says it's time to legally bring people back together on the dance floor in order for our scene to connect with each other and to bring a sense of belonging, said Vanderloop. And there's no day without the night, and there are so many people that need this outlet to keep us sane. 100% agree. 100% agree. What else I want to talk about here? Let's move on from that. I said this, didn't I? I said that. I said this. I said that. Yeah, let's talk about this quickly. Am I the only person that thinks Lex Fridman's a bit lame? Lex Fridman. Don't I think he's a bit lame? Or do you guys agree? Or do you guys like him? Or do you guys not like him? I'm a fan of his podcast. I think his podcast might be one of the better ones to come out of that kind of Joe Rogan ecosystem, right? He's he's got a really good podcast. He asks really good questions. He's a great interviewer, I think, for the most part. Very underrated in his interviews. I like the fact that his podcast has really detailed timestamps, loads of clips. Like, he really goes the extra mile in terms of how he presents it, and there's really a lot of fluff. It's kind of just the meat of the actual conversation. There's not a lot of intro, not a lot of outro. Straight in, 2-hour conversation, long form, 2 hour plus sometimes, with some of the most interesting people in their field, in their respective fields on his show. So again, big fan of the podcast. Listen to it quite regularly. Always checking out the clips as well on YouTube. Like. Him as a person, bit cringe. Especially when it comes to his kind of, cockhole string of Joe Rogan. It's really disturbing how some of these people that have surrounded Joe Rogan or have got fame or have become successful around him are incapable of being critical of him when he makes a mistake or when he says something dumb. And they also go over and above to make sure everybody knows that they're going to do everything in their power to always say the most nicest thing about him, even in the face of just nonsense. It just doesn't make any sense. Sometimes if you're friends with somebody as a public figure, it's probably more of a show of solidarity with your friend who's famous or well-known public figure to just keep quiet and not say anything in response to some sort of controversy they're going through in public. Coming out and, saying what Lex Fridman said here, I got on screen, in response to what the press secretary for the White House said, where she was asked a question regarding Joe Rogan and debate around censorship and whatnot regarding his podcast on Spotify, and she answered the question, right? She just answered it. Again, I'm not a fan of this current administration. I think she's clearly not that great of a job either, but let's be honest, she didn't go up there and say we want to censor Joe Rogan. She was asked a question by a member of the press, a journalist, who probably people should go and direct their anger at him, because if you're sitting there in the flipping press office bit, whatever, of the White House, and you've got time to ask a representative of the White House questions concerning the pandemic and everything that's going on with with America at the moment, using the opportunity to talk about flipping Joe Rogan, a podcaster, is a real waste of time, in my opinion. I think it's kind of similar to there's a journalist in the UK here who's called Simon Stone. I think he's on Instagram called C Stone or something, right? C Stoney, and he does this thing where he starts off like sounding like he's going to ask a really meaningful, deep question, like, I was wondering if you, and he asks some fucking innocuous shit like, oh, what color are Marcus Rashford's shin pads, or are you happy he's back from injury? Some really asinine, benign, mundane question that he asks. So he basically wastes his opportunity, wastes his press pass and his credentials to sit there and ask something that no one really wants answered. Same thing goes to this journalist. Why are you sitting there asking a press secretary about fucking Joe Rogan? So clearly that was a bit of a setup, but still, she answered the question. And in the face of answering that question, Lex Fridman's response on Twitter is as follows. The White House pressuring Spotify to censor Joe Rogan's Un-American, we are better than this. But are you though? If you're from America, you would know, are you better than this really? Are you better than this really? The world's police, are you better than this really? The countless wars started in the Middle East, are you better than this really? Destabilization in, in other parts of the world, especially Africa, are you really better than this really? And that's what I hate about the guy, man. This naivete and this kind of attitude about, oh, love will save the day. We need healing. We need this. Conversations. Like, these people, honestly, they live in such an echo chamber. And again, they talk about echo chambers when it comes to people on the left because they rag against them. But they also live in their own echo chambers where they legitimately think podcasts will save the world. Like, there's people out there that if they just listen to a podcast with Jocko Willink and they woke up at 4 a.m. or they decide to do a cold plunge or decide to run 17 million miles at David Goggins, that suddenly the world's hunger and poverty and homelessness will be solved because of that. And it's no nonsense. It's a nonsense. In the real world, people are just trying to stay alive. They're trying to keep food in their stomachs. They're trying to look after their kids. They're trying to just get a job that pays a decent amount. Not enough, not loads, not peanuts, just a decent enough wage to kind of look after themselves and their family. That's all they want. They don't want fucking rah-rah speeches and conversations about they can start a podcast too. They have a business in them too. They can make wood furniture. They can do this. They could just start up jiu-jitsu and become a world champion. No, they don't care about that stuff. They just want to stay alive. Stay alive. Staying alive. Staying alive. That's all they want. And here this guy is talking about, oh, the Whites are pressuring. No, they're not pressuring him. And let's watch the actual clip of what was actually said in the press conference so I can show you that it wasn't actual pressure. It was just an innocent question asked by a journalist, mostly probing, obviously a bit of a setup, but she answered the question. She didn't get up there and say, we don't want Joe Rogan to ever speak again. She was asked the question and he answered it. Here's the proof.
Last week, the Surgeon General also was asked on MSNBC about Joe Rogan's vaccine comments on Spotify, and he said that tech companies have an important role to play in stopping misinformation because they are the predominant places where misinformation spreads. Does the White House and the administration think this is a satisfactory step?
Our hope is that all major tech platforms and all major news sources, for that matter, be responsible and be vigilant to ensure the American people have access to accurate information on something as significant as COVID-19. That certainly includes Spotify. So this disclaimer, it's a positive step, but we want every platform to continue doing more to call out mis and disinformation while also uplifting accurate information. It's a positive step, but there's more that can be done.
So don't get me wrong. Maybe the end bit is a little bit... Maybe the end bit is a bit concerning. There's, it's a positive step, but more can be done. Cool, you've got me on that one. The end bit was a bit slightly concerning. It was a little bit of an indication of where they want to go in the future. Fine, I understand and I get you. But let's relax. Let's relax. They're not trying to censor Joe Rogan. They're clearly not trying to censor him. Let's just chill out, take a deep breath, and continue from there. But again, what do I know? And actually, before I say what do I know, I actually need to pause this so I can turn the light on because this is looking mad. And we're back. Okay, we're back. Next one, let's see, what do we have here to talk about? Let's just move this out of the way and continue on. Oh, man, it looks like they're trying to cancel my guy Joe Rogan, man. They're trying to cancel my guy Joe Rogan from somebody that's been a fan of the show from 370 upwards. It's sad to see. But it was on the cards, let's be honest. Even as, long-time JRE fans like myself, it was always on the cards. The moment that guy took Spotify money, it was like a ticking time bomb as to when and how they were going to try and cancel him. Because he's always been a bit of a nuisance. I think this mainstream media, whatever it is, whatever you'd call that conglomerate, have always had an issue with him because he's got an outsized influence on society, especially in America. Because he's just one dude with Jamie doing a podcast, but he essentially touches millions of different people. He informs millions of different people. And also people are legitimately tuning into what he has to say and what he's doing more so than watching, mainstream channels and mainstream news sources. So obviously those people in those positions are not going to be happy about him because he essentially is stealing or taking away views and attention and ad revenue that they could be generating and taking it all to for himself. And of course, the deal he's getting on his own, just doing a podcast, is just ridiculous in terms of the numbers, right? So really a very outsized influence. But he was always on the fringes. now that he's kind of been welcomed into the mainstream by being part of Spotify and getting a big deal, it was always going to be sooner rather than later that was going to come to an end in some way, shape, in the kind of some way, shape or form, right? Because it feels like there's a concerted effort from the powers that be to end this guy in a way of like maybe deplatforming him from Spotify and maybe having to relegate him to kind of, you know, going back on YouTube or setting up his own sort of space where he can kind of do his own thing, which is really not the place that we want to be in, because it's kind of looking like it's going to be that way. It looks like there's no tolerance at the moment. Right or left, there's no tolerance. The right can't stand the left can't stand the right, and there is no centrism. So what I think will end up happening in the future, they'll end up having to be two social medias, two internets, two media platforms that you could basically go to that cater to whatever political leanings that you have or ideology that you have, which I think is dangerous, because that kind of division is only going to drive contempt, which is going to drive infighting, which is going to drive war, blah 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 blah. It's not really a good thing. You want everyone to kind of get along kumbaya style, not Lex Fridman heal the world with love, but there has to be some level of like, okay, let's learn how to get along without getting along. That doesn't kind of, you know, end up being, oh, let's just have two stations that speak bad about each other and then not have really objective news and just use that as a platform to kind of enrage our viewer base, which is what it's kind of turning into. But anyway, fast forward. I spoke the other day on the podcast about Joe Rogan's podcast allegedly deleting over 100, I think, episodes in the archives. A lot of them were deleted when he first joined Spotify. He never really offered an explanation as to why they were deleted. A lot of them were friends of his in the comedy scene. Some of them were people that got cancelled, like the Chris D'Elias and the Brian Callens. But it was disappointing to see somebody that was so anti-censorship who decided just to kind of allow Spotify to delete the episodes that they wanted just so he could secure his deal. Now, I understand it's $100 million, maybe some more. I get it. When somebody offers you that money, maybe your kind of morals and your ethics kind of go out the window, but it would have been nice to get an explanation from him to his fans to be like, hey, I know I was saying this pro-censorship stuff and I was anti-censorship and whatever it may be, and I've got these episodes deleted from my page, but this is the reason why, and obviously this is a licensing deal. Once I'm off this platform, I still have those episodes in the archive and I can re-upload them in another site if need be, or something along those kind of lines. But he didn't do any of that, and he kind of said it in passing and kind of made a joke out of it when he was talking to, I think, Fahim Anwar or something, and it was kind of a bit annoying in that regard, but I kind of got it and I moved on. I didn't really mind. Now suddenly, off the back of this COVID-19 misinformation thing that everyone's trying to cancel him for, now it looks like a further 70 episodes have been deleted, so now it's come up to about over 100 or maybe 113 that they're kind of really going for in terms of deleting in the archive, which makes you think, this now isn't just an issue of porting over the shows and him saying they were lost in the transfer, and this obviously isn't kind of Spotify saying we don't want these ones. This is clearly episodes that he's deleting because he feels like they're the ones that might have the most controversial snippets and opinions that might get him in further trouble. And now it's no surprise that we've now got this video courtesy of Worldstar Hip Hop featuring artist India Irie, who basically posted a compilation of her stories of Joe Rogan, unfortunately, saying the R word. And yeah, it's a bit brutal to listen to, I'm not going to lie. But again, being a long-time Jerry fan, I know he used to use this language in the past. It didn't really sit right with me at the time when I heard it. It kind of sting a little bit. But also, I listen to a lot of messed up stuff. And if I'm completely honest, my podcast listening, my catalog of stuff I listen to in terms of podcasts is fairly wide in terms of spectrum, and I'm rarely, if ever, offended by the things that they say. I really don't give a fuck. I really could care less. But I know some people, when they hear this stuff, they'll be like, oh my god, he's racist, which he clearly isn't. Just trying to be edgy, trying to be a comedian, trying to be funny on his show back in the day when no one was listening, and now hundreds of thousands of people are listening. Obviously, when these things come back up again, they look mad crazy. But it obviously is an indication that people are trying to end this guy and take him off of Spotify. But this is a clip of India Arie talking about the evidence that she's found about Joe Rogan talking on his podcast and saying some very unsavory words.
Hey y'all, I want to leave a short message here about why I decided to ask my music be pulled off of Spotify. So check this out.
The nigger thing.
Yes. Saying the word nigger.
You've already said nigger.
D is just like nigger. Saying nigger.
She's calling you a nigger. So
He's a nigger and starts calling them niggers. Word nigger. There should be a word like nigger, especially like the word nigger. That's our nigger. About niggers, he says nigger. Guy, a nigger. And then our niggers start saying nigger. Allowed to use the word nigger. About the word nigger, see nigger, word nigger.
Hearing him say nigger so much is fucking hilarious. I'm not going to lie. It's such a brutal word, isn't it? You hear that someone's, but I don't know, man. Again, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just think again, I generally think no one really cares about this, but it's just a thing that you can use to cancel somebody. So when you, because I've always said usually, I've always said I would really wish in another world I could be some sort of crisis advisor or fixer for a Hollywood star or something, because I think I would have a really good understanding of what people are saying about my client, and I try my best to help them navigate the kind of, the choppy waters of hate that exists on the internet. But from what I've found, from my time on social media, I've found usually if people are trying to cancel you, it's usually because they don't like you as a person. And if that's the case, they're going to try and use any and everything that's available on the internet to bring you down. So if you're not a likable character on the internet, you have to be very mindful that you don't give your haters any free ammunition to bury you. You don't want that to happen. So you have to get rid of stuff, maybe nuke some things here. You have to do that in the background as you continue going on. But I think some people, I don't know why, some celebrities, some public figures, they have a really warped sense of how they're perceived, and they generally think that everyone loves them, or they generally think that everyone hates them. But you have to kind of be aware of like where the hate is, the pockets of the hate, and what they're actually saying about you, so you can have time to kind of counteract and protect yourself in the background. Because I generally don't think for the longest time Joe thought he said anything wrong. I think he was just thought, yeah, I'm repeating this word. Richard Pryor named it special it. It's a bit edgy to say. And he just kept on saying it because it was funny, and why not, innit? Whatever. And then the moment it became a problem, it was already too late. But I think because he thought everyone loves Joe Rogan, he never thought this could end him, which it effectively could. Now, it's not going to end him in a conventional sense. He's not going to be broken desolate anytime soon. But in terms of him being available on Spotify, this could be one of those things that would be the final nail in the coffin for most people in terms of using that word, because nowadays people don't really stand for, people that don't look like myself using that kind of word. But it's hilarious. It really is hilarious just to hear him uttering the word out loud.
Say nigger, and he couldn't say nigger. What's nigger?
I empathize with the people who are leaving for the COVID disinformation reasons, and I think that they should. I also think that Joe Rogan has the right to say what he wants to say. I also think that I have the right to say what I want to say. So as an artist who builds, Spotify is built on the back of the music streaming. So they take this money that's built from streaming and they pay this guy $100 million, but they pay us 0.003% of a penny. Just take me off. I don't want to generate money that pays this.
Which is fair. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, which is completely fair. And I think it actually says a lot about her as an artist that she'd want to stand on that principle. I think it's good. And if anything, it's actually might be beneficial for music streaming artists in the future, because it might actually, push Spotify into giving artists a bigger cut of the share, or bigger cut of the percentage, whatever. Who knows? I doubt it. Most likely it's not. They're going to probably just bury it under the carpet. And if anything, they're going to sacrifice Joe Rogan as a sacrificial lamb and just continue to pay artists 0.3% of every stream. That's what's going to actually happen. But I do like that she has some sort of principle and she's standing on it and be like, you know what? I don't vibe with this, so I'm going to jump off. The concerning part for Joe is that all of these kind of Hollywood figures that were first coming out and supporting his first statement, where he was basically trying to clarify his misinformation speak and basically being quite apologetic to Neil Young and sharing that story that he's said a million times on the podcast. You saw a few comments from loads of Hollywood elite people, actors and whatnot, kind of lending their support, because even though they don't say it, a lot of the kind of big A-list stars out there are very much anti-vax. I think there was a stat somewhere that said a lot of the people that work in Hollywood, the actual actors on screen and shit, the percentage of them that have been vaccinated is very, very, very low. A lot of them are skeptic. A lot of them are either anti-vax or COVID skeptical. So it was no surprise to see them commenting on the post. One of the people that was commenting on these posts that everyone was surprised by was The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He said something like, "Oh, I'd love to be on the show. I'm supporting you, brother." And everyone was like, "Oh my God, wow, amazing." I think it got like 15,000 likes, that comment alone. But unfortunately, because there's other videos come out now about him using the N-word, somebody obviously sent it to him, and he now obviously, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson is not a person, he's an entity, he's a corporation in and of himself. He represents loads of other brands that he's also responsible for presenting in a somewhat milquetoast way, and he has people that he was also supporting with his mere presence. He has responsibilities to them. So now he's come out with a statement effectively distancing himself from Joe Rogan, even though just the other day he was supporting him. So quite clearly, this is already an indication of the sea changing in terms of the sentiment around Joe Rogan. So it will be no surprise for me if sooner rather than later we hear that Spotify decided to end their partnership with Joe. You know, they're going to end it sooner than they did previously. They're going to terminate it, pay him out of his deal, and then kind of continue on, because they can't take this kind of level of scrutiny. I don't think so. I don't think he can, because he's been apologizing more now than I've ever seen Joe Rogan ever apologize in the history of the podcast. Is clearly, you know, the kind of influence that the stock market has, and the responsibility of taking that 100 million and wanting to do right by the people that give you that money and trying to be a stand-up person is definitely weighing on him. And I don't think he's going to be able to withstand that kind of pressure. So far, no one has been able to withstand that kind of pressure. If he can, it would be a flipping great moment for culture in general. But yeah, let's see. But yeah, The Rock's response to somebody sending him, obviously, the clip of that N-word. I think a guy called Don Winslow said as follows: "Dear Rock, you're a hero to many of people, and using your platform to defend Joe Rogan, a guy that used and laughed about using the N-word dozens of times, is terrible use of your power. Have you actually listened to this man's many racist statements about black people? He's not racist. He was making a joke. He's trying to make a comment, trying to be edgy. But Joe Rogan's not racist. Throwing terms like racist and Nazi at people just because they say stuff that you don't like is a bit insane. Let's have some evidence of him actually being racist, and then I'm happy to co-sign. If you're just angry that he said the N-word, cool. But, you know, you saying the N-word and actually being racist are completely two different things, in my opinion. But again, what do I know? Let's continue. The Rock's statement said the following: "Dear Don Winslow, thank you so much for this. I hear you as well as everyone here, 100%. I was not aware of his N-word use prior to my comments, but now I've become educated to this complete narrative. Learning moment for me. Mahalo, brother, and have a good and productive weekend, DJ." I don't know what this means. I've become educated to this complete narrative. I think that's just Hollywood speak for I'm disavowing this guy without publicly disavowing him, because I also don't want to appear to be a bit of a flip-flop, and also don't want to appear to be like, you know, bending the knee, but effectively that is him bending the knee. And it's sad to see, but again, this guy represents a lot. He's a big corporation. He's not a person. He's basically an entity, so it's kind of to be expected. And then, of course, Joe Rogan had to respond and offer up his apology, and you know it's serious. He's in a black jumper. He's sitting in front of a bookcase, looking very somber, like he just got a dressing down from people on the phone, or maybe he got a dressing down from some of his black colleagues in comedy who maybe weren't so. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. If you're actually about this life and you're a stand-up comedian, because that's the thing about Joe Rogan, call him a lot of things, but what he does do is give a platform to shitty comics sometimes to get on his show and to basically boost their audience, to be able to earn loads of money, go on tour, and basically advertise himself. And it's essentially become the de facto place you want to go to if you want to go and promote your comedy special. I wonder if these motherfuckers, these spineless comedians, will they actually decide to step out like India IRE did, reshare her video and say, I'm also taking a stand and I'm refusing to support anything that guy does, Joe Rogan? Or will they try and just pretend that they didn't see it? If they do really, you know, disagree with his use of the N-word, because this will be a time to actually stand up for the things you talk about. Because a lot of these podcasts, especially these stand-up comedian podcasts, they have a lot to say politically, right? About society, about this, about comedy will save the world, loads of things to rabbit on about. But the moment it starts to affect their pocket and their ability to market themselves or brand themselves, they're conveniently silent. They conveniently start looking at the roof. Oh, what's that on the ceiling? No one wants to pay any attention. No one wants to say anything. And to be honest, Joe Rogan also has to take some blame for himself, because as much as a fan of him I am, he said absolutely nothing in defense of Chris D'Elia and Brian Callen, who are both of his friends, most so Brian Callen. Again, I know the accusations are really serious. They're not, you know, they're not something you could just come out and defend your friends front street with. But to be the anti-cancellation guy, to be the anti-censorship guy, and to suddenly remain mute when your best friends or one of your best friends is being accused of some heinous crimes, especially when you consider what Joe has said about Callen himself and how he hooks up with girls. It's like he said, there's a really sketchy clip where he basically, you know, again, I don't want to repeat it because I don't want to get the guy in trouble, but still, that was a disappointing part of it. So maybe this is some sort of like if you don't stand up for your friends, karma coming back and kicking them up in the ass. Because I feel like if you went out of your way to stand up for your friends and defend, you know, them in some way, or defend their character from what you know of them, maybe this backlash wouldn't have been as harsh. I don't think it would have helped really, but you can never know. But anyway, this is a clip of Joe kind of apologizing profusely about his use of the N-word all over these years. I'll play a minute of it and then I'll end it.
Hello, friends.
I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out.
He looks tired as well, innit, man? It's like Joe's aged more in the last 5 years or so, or maybe even 2 years than he has done in the entire time of the podcast. Yes, I know he takes a lot of gear and whatnot, but still, he's aged a lot, man. Sometimes all money is not good money. $100 million from Spotify at the time sounds insane. And again, from what we've heard from reports of comedians that talk too much and can't shut their mouths, supposedly it was way more than 100 million just to license the fucking podcast. A crazy deal, amazing deal, life-changing, generational money. But he was still making boatloads of cash anyway. I think at the last time I was checking, I read somewhere that he was making anywhere between like $30 to $50 million per year off the podcast and ads and whatnot, blah, 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 from views, whatever, right? I'm sure a lot of it got affected by YouTube AdSense and whatnot, because I think a lot of these videos got taken down and demonetized. So I think the move to go to Spotify was mostly in part because of that, because, you spend 4 hours talking to somebody, you think you're going to be making some good money off the podcast, and suddenly they flip and demonetize the entire thing because you spoke about trans issues. I can understand why you'd get a bit of annoyed. You'd be like, you know what, I'm not spending my time uploading stuff on this platform because they're not protecting their creators. But the consequences of taking that money it's become like a golden chalice, right? In some regard, right? That he's now kind of, he's now basically at the beck and mercy of this big corporation, and especially the moves of the stock market. And now that people are really sensitive about people spreading what they say is COVID misinformation out there, they're using this N-word Trojan horse to basically get him out of here. That's what it kind of feels like.
Out of context of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks fucking horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years, but for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s, and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction, or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to another offensive word, and he said it out loud, and they fired him. Not calling anybody or just saying the word out loud. I was also talking about how there's not another word like it in the entire English language, because it's a word where only one group of people is allowed to use it, and they can use it in so many different ways. Like if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic.
I don't know, man. This is some bullshit. White people's fascination with saying nigger is just so weird. I guess because it's whenever something's not allowed or not permitted or looked at, like people are automatically like, even look at his eyes here. Look at that. That's an eye of somebody. I want to say nigger. Why can't I say nigger? What is this fascination with this word? I don't understand it. Of all the hundreds and millions of words that you could use in the English language, that word seems to be the one word white people just can't seem to let go of. They're just intrigued by it. They want to just let it slip out of their tongue like nigger. And it's like, just relax. Relax. It's not that big of a deal. You omit that one word from your vocabulary. It saves you a whole world of bother. You don't lose your job. You don't lose your deals. You don't get deplatformed. It's, the incentives to not use the word are pretty high. Now, obviously the risk and reward thing is high too, because you use the word and you use it in a really derogatory manner. You could essentially go from being unknown to being very well known in a very short space of time. Think of all those people that get cancelled, like the Karens and stuff, where they hurl abuse at some store attendant and say, "Oh, you fucking nigga, you didn't give me a refund." That person went from being unknown to suddenly being very famous, obviously for something crazy. But if you really want fame and if you're really fame hungry and you really want to be about this life, You should go out there and go to the most densely populated black neighborhood you could find and just scream, niggas! I mean, that's what you should be really doing. Where are the niggas? A nigga took my purse. That's what you should be trying to do when you're out there. Really, you should be trying to do that. Then you become famous, but no one's really about this life. Everyone talks a big game like they're about it, but they're not really about it. They're not really. Oh, mate, I find it absolutely insane how much white people fucking love that word. It's just like, let it go, man. Let it go. But yeah, Joe Rogan, man, like, it looks like they're going to deplatform him. I don't think this is going to end any other way. There's too much fucking pressure being built up here. Personally, I think it's a nonsense. I think if you don't like his show, tune into something else. The COVID misinformation thing's nonsense too, because just a few months ago or a couple of years ago, saying that, you know, this virus might have been a lab leak, you were basically, you know, people regarded you as a fucking Nazi, saying that maybe giving the vaccine to children wasn't the best way to go forward. You would be, you know, regarded as a psychopath. And now these arguments are things that people are legitimately talking about in open circles. So this whole misinformation thing is bullshit. It's a new virus. We had no idea it existed prior to obviously taking over and covering parts of most of our world. We're kind of learning as we go along with the experts. We make mistakes. We say some incorrect things here and there. It is what it is. But the ones that who should be accused of information are these governments who are taking, you know, advantage of the situation, putting into place powers and bills and regulations and invasions of privacy that are essentially eroding whatever sense of freedom that we once had. That's actual misinformation. That's something that you should really be, you know, taking more action against, especially when it comes to big pharma in the United States. But again, instead of all those questions, let's just direct the questions at Joe Rogan. Like, oh yeah, these people are flipping insane, man. Legitimately insane. But you know, what can you do? But yeah, we move. Okay, let's see what else we can talk about here. Bear with me a second. I went silent there because I was dreaming about my lunch. Oh god. Oh yeah, let's move to this one. Yeah, quickly talk about this. So, as you guys are aware, I'm an absolute fanatic about dance music, about electronic music, about nightlife, and about festivals, right? I love all of that stuff. And obviously the last few years has been really tumultuous in terms of going to those sort of things because of the pandemic. Loads of things got cancelled, loads of things got postponed, and generally around the world, the nightlife scene has basically been decimated due to governments' really draconian, strict, and harsh rules and regulations and mandates when it comes to dealing with COVID-19. And one of these parts that's really been affected unfairly, I think, has been festivals, especially outdoor ones. In the early part of the pandemic in the UK, we experimented with different approaches with dealing with festivals during this kind of a pandemic and trying to figure out how it would work. We had people doing things in open spaces with nothing kind of covering it, and people occupying their spaces in these little raised platform areas, which were quite cool, I think, in terms of a concept, because that would work, I think, really well for a VIP area. I'm not really a fan of those things, but I think if you are going to make it work, at least offer something that's somewhat meaningful, that would have some sort of appeal, that would actually differentiate your experience from being in a regular kind of general public kind of crowd, in a festival. So what I'm talking about is that in these festivals, earlier parts, they'd have these little squares, these kind of raised platforms where you'd basically have the ability to scan your QR code to get the menu on your phone, order drinks from that raised plinth, but you can only dance and congregate there because obviously that was due to the part in that rule where you could only hang around with people who are basically in your bubble, quote unquote, right? So you could not cross-contaminate. I don't know how that works because you're all coming in one queue, but anyway, regardless, that was basically the idea behind it. And I thought that would be an actual good thing to kind of implement in regular festivals for a VIP section, because usually VIP sections of festivals are either you get access to a bar, a VIP toilets, whatever, maybe some different sort of tents that you might go to, or sometimes they'd have this section at the front of the stage, or the front of the stage, where it would only be for VIP people to stand in. And it was a bit crap because you just got to stand in front of the regular people that are behind you, so there wasn't much of an experience, and usually you're too close to the stage to see anything. Sometimes you have to kind of tilt your neck up. It wasn't necessarily the best experience, I don't think so, when you go to a festival. You either want to go to a festival and be part of the nonsense and be part of the madness that's happening with the general public, or you want to be in your own little secluded private place. You don't want to have this weird kind of in-between thing. Anyway, fast forward, one of the main festivals I was looking to go to is called Houghton, a really well-regarded and popular festival here in the UK that's run by Craig Richards, who's also a very influential DJ here in the UK. If you're from here, you would know that he does loads of back-to-back sets at Fabric with Ricardo Villalobos, and obviously does a lot of nights too at the Lion and Lamb pub here in Soho, no, sorry, here in Shoreditch in London. But Houghton's kind of like his interpretation or his idea of what a sick sort of dance music festival would look like. And from what I've heard in terms of reports and video clips I've seen, it legitimately does look like one of the best sort of festivals that we have available here at the moment in the UK. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they've not been able to put it on. I think for the last 3 years, they've had to postpone it time and time again. And this, unfortunately, because of the craziness of the pandemic, is actually only the third one they're doing. They only were able to do 2. They done the first, which I heard logistically was a bit of a nightmare, but it had a lot of good things from it. And then the second one was meant to be really busy, but still really good in terms of the ability to give people the idea or the impression, okay, cool, there's some minerals or there's some meat to this festival that I can hold on to come back to next year. Because that's usually the thing. Usually people don't know about festivals, whether it's good or not, until it gets too hyped. But sometimes if you're able to give people an indication of how good it might be, they're able to kind of hang about and see you and trust you for the next one. And I remember seeing a couple of videos about Houghton, one being this one that I'm actually going to play here from 2018 of Ricardo Villalobos playing, that got me infatuated with the festival. And ever since then, I've always wanted to go. And I'm so glad now to hear that they're finally looking to ramp up production of the new festival, or the festival for this year, 2022. And they're going to have the exact same lineup that they wanted to put on in 2019, 2022. So it should be an absolute barnstormer. But here's a clip of Ricardo Villalobos playing at Houghton Festival in 2018, the last one before the pandemic. Good mix of this at the end. Let me skip it. That's a good. Hear this mix. Hear this mix. Hear this mix from Ricardo. Hear this mix. This mix is so good. That's it. Before. Yeah, there you go. Before this. Yeah, let's go here. The mix is incredible. Yeah, hear this mix. Hear that mix. Good. So good. Oh. So as you can tell, magical rave. Supposedly the sets are as magical as what I've seen or what I've shown you here in this video clip, and luckily it looks like the next iteration of it in 2022 is actually going to happen this time around, because things are back to some semblance of normality in the UK. Again, things could change at a dime, but it looks like it's going to go ahead. So this is courtesy of Houghton. It says as follows: Houghton, 11th to the 14th of August 2022. It says, with great pride, we present the program of music for Houghton 2022. Our intention has been to honor the festival that didn't happen in 2019. With the return of possibilities, we finally have the chance to build upon the joy of year 1 and year 2. We look forward to successfully celebrating year 3 in year 6, which is crazy. None of us could have imagined such a suspenseful and prolonged journey to the summit, but get there we shall. Preparations are fully underway. The magic of Houghton will soon return. Tickets will go on sale Thursday the 3rd of February at 10 a.m. on Resident Advisor. So I think tickets are available now at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there they are, 230. You got living your vehicle pass £70, car park pass for 15, and obviously a deposit for the first installment. Now, it's quite evident to see that the tickets are still available. I think prior, I think 2019 or no, 2018, whatever it was, tickets sold out really quickly, and especially the first iteration, the first one I remember selling out in, maybe a day or maybe a couple of days. So quite clearly you can see what I've been saying on the podcast before about there being a real sort of kind of lack of people going out nowadays. I think the pandemic has unfortunately changed nightlife forever in good and bad. And I think one of the bad things is that we've unfortunately lost some of the general punters, the people that would have generally filled up festivals and venues, who kind of just go out for the weekend here and there, or maybe go out once a year, have definitely got put off from going out to these events because of the pandemic, because they're maybe afraid of catching the virus, or just don't want to be in kind of packed environments, or maybe discovered new habits and hobbies that they're more interested in. So that's the only bummer, concerning part of it. And obviously another part of it might be because a lot of customers might have held onto their tickets, they're rolling them over into 2022, so these might be new tickets that they're putting on sale for new customers who basically want to purchase it. I don't really know, but that aside, that's maybe the only slight concern about it. But I do like how they organize it. I like how everything is done. Obviously, accommodation wise, you have to kind of get that set up yourself, in terms of making sure that you buy a pre-installed tent system, that they already have it there, which is a bit different from the stuff that I've gone to, where you have to kind of bring your own things. They've got, regular tents, they've got airstreams, they've got tiki huts and whatnot, depending on your budget. Most likely I would definitely go for these tents here that they have, called the Tangerine Fields, and if I'm not mistaken, they're like 140. They are about 140, including the air mattress and whatnot. Not the most luxurious spot to stay in, but again, having been to plenty of kind of field raves and stuff that you have to kind of sleep outdoors for, they're usually quite magical events, especially when you're there for like a week or 4 days, surrounded by loads of strangers who are also fanatical about the music and the scene as much as you are. It definitely is a bit of a unique experience, because you get to tap out from kind of regular everyday life. Usually in these kind of locations, and the internet and network on your phone is crap, so you don't get time to sit on your phone and be on social media all day, so you actually have to talk to strangers, and find new friends and find stuff to do, and just ingratiate yourself completely into that program that they have. And what hell of a program do they have available for us? The lineup is just ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. Obviously some easy one that stands out, like Andy Blake from World Unknown is going to be there. You got Gerd Janssen's going to be there. You got Died Syndrome is going to be there. What else? I'm seeing that's just standing out here for the most part. Horse Meat Disco. So many people. Obviously not this person, we don't care about them. Jerome Hill. We got Joy Orbison playing. Like, come on, man. Leonard Wilkins playing. Too many. Magda's gonna be there. That will be a flipping good set, especially if she's playing vinyl. Move D, Nicholas Lutz. Like, too many. Rogan Flugel, Sassy J, this lady, I forgot how to pronounce her name. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but she's Irish. She's really good. Seth Troxler's gonna be there too. So it's a really good mix of people. Zip, like Ricardo Villalobos and Zip in the same venue. You know they're gonna play a couple of back-to-back sets. That's gonna be absolutely a barnstorming event. Raresh is there too. Like, mad man. There's gonna be so many arms flailing in the back in the flipping DJ booth. I really can't wait. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's a bit of a toss up between going to Houghton and then going to Primavera Sound. Obviously, because Primavera Sound, if I'm not mistaken, weekend 2 is in June, July. I think I might actually have it up here, actually. That I've actually put up. Yeah, it's actually up here. So June, July. Cost-wise, if I kind of added it up roughly, I think Houghton is like $230 ticket, $140 for the campaign thing, and then I guess transportation and whatnot. So you're basically looking at 500 quid in terms of getting you there with a bit of spending money left over. And of course you can add some more if you want to have more spending money, but just to kind of get you there, 500 quid. And again, Barcelona Primavera, unfortunately, because UK festivals are so expensive, it's actually about the same, right? Because the tickets to Primavera Sound, again, I'd probably go to this weekend too, which is June 2nd to June 12th. Which features the following people. Headliners on June 9th, Dua Lipa, Gorillaz, Interpol, Tyler, the Creator. The 10th, you got Lord, Massive Attack, The Strokes. And June 11th, you got Georgia Smith, Megan Thee Stallion, Tame Impala, Phoenix, and Yeah Yeahs. I think Playboy Kai is also playing on this bill, if I'm not mistaken. That's why I wanted to see also. But yeah, regardless, the list is pretty decent, right? But then the tickets are €245. The flights will probably be about €120, 160 maybe. So you're still looking at the same amount. But then again, if you add the Airbnb cost, maybe it will go up to about 700, 600. So there's not much of a difference. So either you go to a festival in the middle of England, in the rain, in an open field where it might rain, right? In a flipping tent that you're paying 140 quid for, or you decide to pick up your bags and go Primavera and go to one of the nicest cities in Europe, in Barcelona, eat amazing food, have great weather, meet some interesting people, listen to some cool and interesting bands you probably haven't heard of, and go from there. Because let's be honest, right? As great as that lineup is, I probably listen to everybody's set on here at least once. Or I've heard the production from them, or I've heard the remix on edit from them, or I know what they look like, right? Every single person on this list, I can say without a doubt. But when it comes to the Primavera sound list, there's just so many bands and artists and people and live performances, people that I don't really know who they are. So it's going to be a bit of, slow dives. It's a flipping barnstorm of a list to go to. So it's a bit of a toss up. I'm probably going to be leaning more on the Houghton side of things because I think it's a new experience, something I haven't been to clearly, and that video from Ricardo Villalobos playing in 2018 is just too good to turn down, isn't it? It's just too good to turn down. What else do we have here to talk about? Let's move on. We did that, we did the how long have I done? I've done an hour, haven't I? Yeah, I've done an hour. Yeah, I've done an hour. Maybe we'll leave it there. I've done an hour of the AgostinhoZinga show. Sorry for the pauses and all that malarkey, but you had to get it done. If you've enjoyed the show and you liked what you heard, do the right thing by me, do the right thing. Another episode of the bonus show is going to be coming out hopefully tomorrow, so if you haven't had a chance to sign up to the Patreon, make sure you do. The link is in the description. I've also got a website now where you just go straight to the main podcast page. So if you want to find out links to contact me or other social media stuff concerning myself, head over to the AgostinhoZinga show, all one word. I actually get up in the screen so you can see it. It's that one there, right? The AgostinhoZinga show there, all one word. You can search that and obviously be able to find my my main podcast page. You'll be able to see all the episodes I have there available already. Up to 550. You can have a contact button, so if you want to send me an email and whatnot, you can do that via the website. So definitely go there and check that out if you're that way inclined. I would appreciate it. But apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you listen to the audio podcast, you hear a song. If you're watching a video, it will just end right here. Until next time, my friends, until next time.